If your sales have hit a plateau, it's probably not the script or the strategy. If you're trying to scale, but your results are feeling inconsistent, you're likely missing the patterns that are actually driving your behavior under pressure. We're going to show you how to find the hidden blocks so that you can finally scale with confidence. Welcome to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Dahya, and today I'm sitting down with Mitch Sapoff. We're talking about the hidden playbook behind consistent sales, what's really going on under the surface when we make the decisions. Mitch is someone who looks at the sales and the business growth a bit differently to most. He spends his time helping 7 to 8 figure businesses, especially coaches and agencies, scale up their sales teams without the usual guesswork. Most people in his world are looking for the next script or some sort of magic hack, but Mitch focuses on the patterns behind how we actually perform. He's got a real knack for understanding what drives our behavior when the pressure is on and a big deal is on the line. He uses things like AI and modern tools, but it's always grounded and on the human side of things. It's about getting people to work smarter so that the results actually stay consistent over the long run. He knows real growth doesn't come from grinding harder. It comes from seeing what really is going on under the hood. Mitch, it's great to have you here. Welcome to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Mitch, take us on a journey of your life from childhood to now.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, look, my childhood was a little bit different from most childhoods. I had a real knack and a real talent for singing. And I found myself spending most of my time when I wasn't in school at singing rehearsal with my vocal coaches. And then I would go on stages across the world and perform. I was even in an off Broadway musical. So that's what my childhood looked like. And, I kind of got used to being in front of people and having eyes on me. And so obviously it felt a little bit more natural to me and a little bit more intuitive. Once as an adult, I started to hop onto sales calls and give presentations and everything like that. It never felt like, wow, like what am I about to do? Because I was trained in it from the get go. How did I actually, end up having to do sales calls and presentations and be in front of people? It started when I was in college and I was looking for a summer internship in finance, right? That's what I thought I was going to go into. And then a buddy of mine from high school reached out to me and was like, I'm starting an app development agency and you seem like you'd be really good at like helping me get some clients in. Do you want to come in and like figure out sales and marketing and then we could run it together? And because I was struggling to actually land an internship in finance, because it was like in between freshman and sophomore year, they wanted someone with a little bit more tenure, if that makes sense. I said, yeah, why not? And so I came in and I figured out the sales piece after, maybe 6, 9, 12 months of like throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. And once I realized that I was pretty good at sales and I kind of had a knack for it, I started to, take courses and do different trainings online and learn from, different mentors. And eventually I discovered high ticket sales, high ticket closing, right? This was around 20, there were first people online that started talking about it. And I got really excited by it, because it's a higher velocity, shorter sales cycle. You get more instant feedback. You could hop onto a call with someone and in 30 to 45 minutes change their entire life and have them asking you to take their money at the end of that call, right? So that was really exciting and dynamic for me. And after a couple years of experience in high ticket selling, people started asking me for training. People started asking me to connect them with other salespeople to help them sell their own offers. And so very organically, I was like, maybe I could start charging money for this. So I started a B2C sales coaching program, trained over 300 sales reps in high ticket sales and the psychology behind it, placed many of them on some of the top offers that many people listening have probably heard of, 7 and 8 figure businesses as well. And these days, I took my talents more to the B2B side, and I've been working with businesses that are wanting to scale to 8 figures and beyond by really dialing in the way that their sales team sells and making sure that their process is not built around scripts, but it's built on the underlying principles of selling so they could hire better people, ramp them faster, and retain them for the lifetime of their business.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to learning as much as I can on this episode so that I can apply that in my business.
Yeah, for sure.
You started out to get into finance and then landed helping your friend and his business, and there you go. You found your niche effectively that you followed, which is great, and then you're helping other people level up as well, so which is awesome. You talk a lot about looking at things through a pattern lens. So when did that obsession of identifying patterns start for you?
That's a great question. It happened super, super, super naturally. In fact, I didn't even realize that I had a gift for pattern recognition until I got into a relationship late last year where, you know, fi- it's like, inside of a relationship, of course, we're going to have different triggers and different things that come up and different things that we're going to notice about our partner. But she noticed that I noticed things that she was doing before she even noticed them. And she was like, fuck, you're right. And so I started learning more and more about like what my own pattern recognition even meant and what it was capable of. And I started seeing how can I apply that to like make money, right? And so inside of the sales teams that I was running and managing, I started to really consciously be like, okay, like how can I take a look at the first 3, 5, 7 minutes of a sales call and already be able to figure out like what is broken in the salesperson's brain, in the prospect's brain, and what sort of beliefs and what sort of behaviors are actually killing the deal. And once I started looking at it through that lens, that is when the light bulb went off. And it's like, this is the unique value prop that no AI can replicate. Yeah. And that actually shaped a lot of how I position my own offer to the market and to the world today.
Yeah, and we are pattern recognizing machines. Right? We are built that way. Fortunately, a lot of us don't recognize the patterns, and we just keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So we do end up doing the same thing over and over and over again. What was a specific moment when you had that realization?
Yeah, yeah, it was with her. And it's interesting because it's like we never viewed it like a bad thing together, right? So it's like, let's call a spade a spade. In relationships, if you're with someone that you absolutely love and adore and feel like you want to be with together for the rest of your life, then of course they're going to bring up things in you that are worth looking at, right? As they say, your partner is your best mirror, right? So me and my girlfriend, we never shy away from those kinds of conversations. And looking at things for what they are. And when she said that I have better pattern recognition skills than she's ever seen, she's like you should really monetize this because this is like the unique value prop that you bring to the market, and not just to the market, but to the world. And so in that moment, I kind of put two and two together, and I was like, you know what, she's probably right.
And what did that change in the way you looked at your own performance?
And my own performance in terms of sales or business or
Yeah, yeah, sales. Yeah.
yeah. In terms of sales, I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, I do still take some sales calls myself, but for the most part, over the last, let's call it 5 years, I've spent a lot of time documenting my sales style, my sales process, and coaching and working with different salespeople to basically download that into their brains while still making sure that they have their own unique voice. And so the way that I apply pattern recognition now is like I mentioned earlier, I'll listen to the first 5, 10 minutes of a sales call, and I'll typically be able to tell you exactly what is broken in your sales system and how to fix it. And then if the business wants to pay me to fix it for them, then I do that as well. And it's like in retrospect, I've always done it that way, but I haven't been able to put words to it until quite recently.
When you started helping businesses in this way, what was their response?
What was the business's response?
Yeah.
Well, they just saw the numbers go up, right? They just saw their close rate go up. They saw their cash collected go up, and they were like, "Mitch, I don't know what you're doing, but it's really working, right?" Because I work directly with salespeople for the most part, right, inside of the business, and sometimes I do work directly with the founder or the sales manager, right?
Mm.
And so it's funny you ask like what was the business's response once they saw that happening, because actually the direction that my own offer and what I'm bringing to the market is taking is less of a like I will just do this whole thing for you, because what I found is that actually makes a business quite vulnerable if they just hire someone to do it for them, because if that person, God forbid, gets hit by a bus tomorrow, then they have nothing. And so the shift in my business model that I've actually made as of late is more so I will install the system inside of business. It's theirs forever, right? And I will consult the business owner or whoever it is that's managing the sales team on how to basically do what I do in way less time than they would previously have to get the same results, right?
Yeah,
So
you
shift in the
yeah.
business.
Yeah, you're teaching them how to fish, right? And then helping them with the right tools to be able to do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So most people think sales, they just need a better script, but you say that it's more about how we think under pressure. So why is that internal shift so much harder to master than the strategy?
Because you have to confront the little boy inside of you or the little girl inside of you, right? You have to actually look at them and talk to them and see what they're scared of and see what they believe and basically nurture them through those fears and reprogram those beliefs, right? And that's work that most people either they want to do it but keep on making excuses for why it's not time to do it, or they just don't want to do it, right? Because it's a lot easier to be like, what's the next hack? What's the next question that I could ask? What's the next line that I could say? There's many sales instructors and sales trainers that they don't get me wrong, they definitely get results, right? And their clients and their students definitely get results. But I feel like the way that they teach sales is like you're kind of like acting, where like you have to kind of come up with a certain tonality and way of asking the question versus like if you can just be authentic and really listen to the prospect and think in real time and judge in real time and understand what's coming up for you and for them in real time and nurture it, then you'll naturally have the tonality that you need to ask a question. You'll naturally ask the questions in the way that is going to hit the hardest and the best way for the prospect. So I focus on that piece a little bit more than scripts and tactics.
Yeah, sounds to me that you're applying some life coaching at the same time because we are human after all, and just because wear a hat of a salesperson, we're still human underneath it all. So that's great. That's great what you're doing. Why do you think we are so quick to look at new tactics instead of ourselves?
Because it's easier, right? Because if there's a new script to use, like that's an instant win, right? Versus looking at ourselves, that's a lifelong journey. That's a lifelong process, right? And sometimes you have to tear down the walls to rebuild something, right? So it's like I'd be lying to you if I told you that there haven't been many times where when I've worked with someone to bring them to the point where they're actually happy with how they're selling and the income that they're making as a result of it, that first there was a period of months upon months where they questioned their entire freaking existence, right? And their performance actually became worse for a little bit than what it was before. Right. And so obviously that is very, very, very dangerous when you're working with a business because then you're literally killing their bottom line and their top line for a couple of months until it then exponentially goes up. And so the way that I do it there is I do it in very, very small test environments and in very little like spurts where we first find the lowest hanging fruit that will get them the quick win. And then over time, we slowly take the band-aid off. And I find that that works better when I'm working with businesses because then their growth does not suffer.
You're changing their lives as well through this process because it's not just the sales side of it. Actually, building confidence in themselves as well. So when they're feeling that resistance, they've got that fear, or what does that look like? That internal resistance look like in that whole sales process that you're in?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good question. So here's the thing. They don't know that they have the fear. They don't know that
Mm.
they have the limiting belief. They just know that they don't really want to say a certain line in their script or in their guidelines. They don't want to extract a certain piece of information. Oftentimes, the more confrontational questions, and I say confrontational in quotation marks because those are arguably the most important sorts of questions, right? Confronting the prospect on like why they haven't made a change before, right? And if they're comfortable continuing the way that they've been continuing, and if there's an objection, actually addressing it because humans are designed to kind of avoid friction and avoid conflict because they want to be liked and they want to be accepted, right? And they are afraid naturally of threat, right? Because back in the day, right, I'm talking thousands and thousands of years ago, if you said something to offend, right, your fellow caveman, they could literally kill you, right?
Mm.
Some of those instincts are still kind of like programmed inside of us when we get onto sales calls. And I speak to so many people that at the end of the call, they're literally afraid to handle objections. And I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? That they climb outside of your Zoom screen and like punch you in the face. Like that's not the worst case is they hang up the call. And why is that so bad? Why are you so afraid of that? Right. And consciously they get it, but there's some subconscious, unconscious work that has to be done to basically like they have to tell their nervous system that as well. You know,
Mm,
because conceptually they understand. And then the other piece, man, is like understanding the why. Like understanding why there is a certain structure to the sales call, why you do need to ask certain questions, right? Instead of jumping over them because they're like slightly uncomfortable. And so once we have salespeople and businesses understanding why the questions that are there and why the process that's there is there, all of a sudden they're more bought into the process and they have an easier time actually, asking the questions and saying the things and doing the things.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, it must be uncomfortable for them when these limiting beliefs and the fear is popping up. But helping them through it, it's amazing that you're doing that. So when you're working with the high 7, 8 figure businesses, what is the most common pattern that you keep seeing that stops them?
Yeah, they are their own worst enemy. And here's what I mean. There's a couple of things I see. Sometimes once they start making all that money, they start looking at ways to cut costs, right? So then they'll start like, offering less attractive commission plans. They will start trying to save money on cost per lead. They will start potentially having the salespeople bear more of like the refund clawback or something like that. That's one way that they could hold themselves back. Another way that they could hold themselves back is they might actually start trying a bunch of different things with regards to sales and marketing, like new scripts, new funnels, whatever, right? Like the new shiny object instead of just further investing into what is already working. The third way that they could shoot themselves in the foot is not valuing the opinions and the ideas of their salespeople. Like me personally, as a rep, let's call it 7, 8 years ago, I had so many, at least what I thought were great ideas for the sales team that I was on and for the business. And like, listen, I'm not saying that these businesses or these sales managers have to implement all these ideas, but like at least make me feel heard, at least make me feel valuable, right? So like back then when that happened, I felt so shut down by the sales manager that I was like, I'm not excited about working here anymore. And so I slowly started to kind of like tune him out and detach and start looking for other offers to sell for. And then I left soon, right? And then it's weird because the offer ended up like imploding shortly thereafter. Because like management just started making really questionable decisions. So I see that happen a lot with the 7 and 8 figure businesses.
So there's also that from what I'm hearing, there's a bit of scarcity and lack that kicks in as well. Yeah,
A little bit of that, absolutely.
yeah, exactly. How do you help someone see a pattern that they didn't even know that they had?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me give you the best tangible example. So there was this girl on a sales team that I was running, and she was awesome. Like she had one of the highest close rates out of the entire team, and she was an absolute shark, and she was a go getter, and she went after it. But she had this thing where she was very limited in how much empathy she gave to the prospect on sales calls. And she would also like try to fake a certain state because she thought that that's what would get her the deal. And yet she was still closing really well despite that. But when she would have her slumps and I would start reviewing calls, those would be the first things that I would point out and notice. And then we'd work together on actually removing those, right? And changing the beliefs around, hey, like I have to act a certain way in order to get what I want, or I shouldn't show empathy because of reasons X, Y, and Z. And once we had removed those patterns, right, all of a sudden he's not slumping anymore. Surprise, surprise. So that's just like one example.
Yeah, and is it usually emotional reaction or is it also like a bad habit as well?
It's both. It's both.
It's both.
Yeah.
So you use a lot of AI powered optimization now. So what does that technology actually help them reveal and that the human behaviors that are holding them back?
That's a good question. We haven't gotten around to AI-ifying the behavioral stuff. The part that we've been AI-ifying has been more of the left brain stuff, more of like the data plumbing, the KPI management, right? The script adherence, and even like the sales methodology adherence. And so AI has been really good for us in like surfacing us what the problem is. And then we as humans look at why it's going on. Right. And like AI, not yet exceptional at figuring out the why. And I don't think it's going to be good at figuring out the why for the foreseeable future, most likely the next 3 years, I want to say. And so that is the business opportunity for me and my company because this sort of human pattern recognition is like not replaceable by AI just yet. And then once it is, then of course we plan to be on the forefront of utilizing AI and perhaps even being the seller of the shovels to the diggers of the gold when it comes to, AIifying human behavior.
Yeah. I guess if you are able to take each person and have their behaviors and so on in a knowledge base that AI could reference, and when they are repeating those patterns, that AI is able to, it could be watching a video or reviewing a video that it could actually pick up on and say, hey, here's some points, areas where there could be some opportunities.
Absolutely, absolutely, right? Like the same way that, many people listening probably use ChatGPT or Claude
Mm,
to be like their therapist, like sometimes, right? Like if you prompt ChatGPT or Claude in a certain way, it could actually really give you good like potential insights. So, we definitely use AI in that sense, right? But again, I don't think it's good enough at
mm,
like, okay, here is why this person actually missed this line in this. Don't think we have enough data yet.
no.
I'm also working on building that data set through the live work that I'm doing. So, you better bet that I'll be on the forefront of that once it's time.
Yeah, absolutely. How can a small team start using this technique without getting overwhelmed?
Well, so the easiest way to use AI right now in your business with regards to a sales team is again for like the data plumbing, right? So it's like I don't like having sales reps fill out their own like spreadsheets or anything like that on like how many calls they took, cash collected, whatever. Because salespeople are like actually notoriously really bad at like managing those kinds of things. And so I recommend that a business get into like automated KPI tracking as fast as possible. Like if they're using a platform like Go High Level, there's a bunch of tools that can connect to actually make that piece a lot simpler. But in terms of using my technique, let's say they were to not work with me, but they want to just take something away from this conversation that they could go and apply right away. It's actually very simple, Anthony. It's literally, and hear me out, just listening to what the prospect is saying and basing the next thing that you say or ask on that and not on a predetermined agenda that you had. So once you can actually be present with the prospect and really serve them, then that can actually quiet any sort of limiting things that are holding you back in the moment. I mean, obviously you have a great opportunity after the sales call to then go and review the sales calls and notice what was coming up in you. But if you just focus on serving the prospect for the sake of the call, right, then it will mostly be about them and you can almost be like their therapist without trying to like solve all of their emotional problems and just listen, be present, ask questions based on the last thing that they said. And you don't even have to give them this like crazy, glamorous, elaborate pitch. They themselves will just ask you some questions on how your offer works. You answer them very simply and succinctly, and you'll be surprised. All of a sudden, you get less objections, right? All of a sudden, when you get an objection, you're not like worried about it because you're just worried about serving the prospect. So I think that's a very, very like immediate overnight fix that someone can implement. And I wouldn't be surprised if that alone doubled their close rates.
Yeah, isn't it interesting how when you stay present and you work moment to moment,
Yeah.
that things change? I did a bit of acting, and I took a 2-year acting course learning this technique called the Meisner technique by Sanford Meisner, and it was all about working moment to moment. And you basically you're responding on the behavior of the other person. And it's almost like that. When you stay authentic, when you stay present and you're working moment to moment, it's going to feel less mechanical, but also it's more organic, right? They're going to feel comfortable, you're going to feel comfortable, and it's going to be easier for both
Precisely.
parts.
Precisely.
So to get to the next level of performance, we usually have to let go of a lot of old ways of thinking. So, what is one thing most sales leaders need to unlearn right now?
That sales is about hitting your quota and hitting your numbers. listen, no hate to Grant Cardone. I mean, obviously, he's made a lot more money than me and probably 99.9% of the people listening to this podcast, and he's done really well for himself, right? Now, the one thing that I vehemently disagree with is I watched a session, like a sales training session that he did with his team, maybe like 5 years ago or something like that. And in the session, he was talking about like why they should close the prospect. And he was talking about like something like they should close the prospect because this prospect is paying for the vacation that they're taking their wife on. Like the prospect is paying for the salesperson's vacation that they're taking their wife on. So they should go after the prospect and at all costs close the deal. And like the reason why I don't like that is because that feels very self-centered and like, hey, it obviously works, right? But at what cost? At what cost, right? Does the prospect feel good after they've handed over their money or the next day, right? Like you want them to feel empowered. You don't want them to feel impulsive. You want to serve them. You want to give them a great experience. And I don't know about you, Anthony, but I will take a little bit less money if it means that I'm sleeping comfortably at night, knowing that I'm making people feel good, right? I think that
Yeah.
that is a bigger mission, vision, value than any kind of money or transactional or impulsive sale can create.
Yeah, 100%. It's gotta come from a servant heart, right? Not like going after money and being
Yeah,
like it all being about money, right? And it's about improving the other person's life or business or whatever you're doing. But you got to come from a place of impact, not just monetary gain all the time. What did you personally unlearn to get to where you are now?
what did I personally unlearn to get to where I am now with regards to sales or just life in general or business?
You could tell us a little bit about sales, but and also business as well.
Yeah, I mean, so when I was younger, you know, hustle culture was very prominent, right? Gary Vee was like very, very big on social media. Listen, I love Gary Vee. I have a lot of respect for what he's built, what he's done, how he moves, right? But he was like one of the biggest proponents of hustle culture. These days, it's Alex Ramosi. He's like, hey, like I lived in a basement. I worked 14, 16-hour days. And it's like, I appreciate the grind, right? I really do. And I enjoy to work, but I think that there's too much of an emphasis on like, you have to do all this just to be successful. And I've found like when I felt like I was like locking myself in a room and like not coming out until I got things done, it always felt like more of a push than a pull. I like when it feels like more of a pull where I'm inspired, right? I'm working in natural light. Sure, I could put in the 10, 12, 14 hours, but it doesn't really feel like a lot because I'm building something that I'm so excited about. Right. And the only thing that I'm quote unquote sacrificing is like some time with friends that I would rather spend building anyways. Right. So I think that the Alex Ramosis and the Gary V's, like they're a certain like personality type where like literally work is their life and that's great for them. But I think that many people fall into the trap of like thinking that just because Alex and Gary are that way, then that's like the only way to be successful. Right. So it takes a little bit of trial and error to like kind of still find your ground and find your balance. And man, I'd be lying to you if I said that I have found it, right? If you asked me a year ago, I'd say, hey, yeah, like I found it, right? But then as I've been building this new thing, right, I've kind of found myself like more identifying with the Alex Ramosi content of like, hey, 14, 16 hours a day in a basement. But sometimes I catch myself and I'm like, but is that the way that's going to work for me? Is that going to get me there? So, it's still a little bit of a battle and a little bit of a negotiation with myself every single day.
Yeah, the hustle culture is something that I don't subscribe to personally. For me, it's about flow state. If it's about whatever you're doing, you're enjoying it so much that you're in that flow state that hours go by and you get lots of stuff done. Right in the last year and a half or year and a half that I've had this business, the AI workflows business, I've done 16-hour days. I'm usually working till 1 o'clock in the morning every night, and I don't feel exhausted. I don't feel like I'm grinding it. I actually am in flow because I'm building stuff that I'm passionate about, that I'm loving. So I think if you're doing something that excites you, then it's not going to be a hustle thing. And also it doesn't feel so good when when you're hustling all the time, and also if you're talking to clients and to them it feels like you're hustling with them. I don't think that's a good way of doing business anyway. So I think it's you've got to be honest and authentic and to yourself as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Now, decision making under pressure is a huge part of what you teach. So, what does your own mental process look like when things get intense?
Yeah. Well, so we can talk about it from a couple of different standpoints. First, we could talk about like how to make decisions under pressure when you're on a sales call itself, right? And so, how often has it happened to the listeners of this podcast? And it's pretty often where they're on a sales call and it's kind of getting towards the end of the call and the prospect is like, "Hey, like I got to think about it." Right? And so what do you immediately wanna do when that happens? What's the first thing that you wanna do before you actually, like, lock in and say, "Here's what I'm actually gonna do"? What's the easiest thing to do?
Well, I guess most people will be like, they'll be trying to handle that objection, right?
I feel like the easiest thing to do is just be like, "Okay," and, like, let them go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And so as far as decision making under pressure, like I feel like the best thing to do is the thing that feels the most uncomfortable, right? Because it feels uncomfortable to like actually confront the prospect, right? So it starts with making the decision internally to confront the prospect. That's number one. Number two is deciding how you're gonna confront the prospect. Because you're not gonna just confront them. It's like, no, you can't think about it. That's not gonna work. That doesn't feel good for me. That doesn't feel good for the prospect. So I'm going to do that. Right. So now it's like, okay, how do I confront the prospect in a way that's actually valuable for them? Right. Doesn't necessarily trigger them, but actually helps them get to a decision. Because it's not even that like you absolutely need them to close on the call that you're trying to close them on, but you need to make sure that they at least have enough clarity that they know what they're even going to go and think about. Right. Because thinking about it is so vague. And what typically happens when someone says, or even they believe themselves that they need to think about it? What happens?
Well, you've got some resistance there.
Well, for sure. But what happens when you
Yeah.
get off the call? Do you actually think about it?
No,
Not you, but most prospects.
no, they'll probably just get on with their life. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
like swept under the rug. And so you'd be doing your prospect a disservice as a salesperson if you let them do that. Because now that's a change that they're not making. So again, it's not your job to like close them on the call at all costs, but it's your job to surface what the actual considerations are and what kind of clarity they need in order to give you a yes or a no decision. Right. And so now you have to decide which direction you're going to take the conversation in so that you can bring clarity to the prospect. And luckily, there's a framework I came up with. It's called DD&I, right? Which is a very simple 4-step questioning framework, right? That no matter what the objection is and no matter what the prospect's answers are to your questions, you can use the framework to formulate the next question. And the only thing that you really have to decide is you're going to customize what the prospect said based on the part of the framework that you're up to. But once you get enough practice with listening to what the prospect is saying and formulating your next statement or answer throughout the call based on what they're saying, the part at the end actually comes a lot easier. So that's one way that we could talk about decision making under pressure. The other way, when it comes to decision making under pressure, I mean, it's still the same thing, right? The thing that makes you the most uncomfortable. I read this book called The Surrender Experiment. And it talks about this guy that whatever felt the most uncomfortable, he did it. And then his life turned out great. Even when things seemed like they were going downhill, he kept on leaning in and he leaned in and then he ended up building an amazing life for himself. And so I've tried implementing some of those principles. And so far the universe has not done me dirty with that. So that's some food for thought as well there.
Yeah. You got to lean into the discomfort and just, yeah. The thing is, what happens is that you're expanding yourself. You're getting out of your comfort zone, right? Okay. So, how do you keep your cool when a big deal is on the line?
Knowing that it doesn't matter if you fuck it up, right? Because what's the worst that could happen? You lose the deal. Okay, you'll get the next one.
Yeah.
Or
You'll learn
or the
from it.
what's that?
You'll learn from it, hopefully.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's from fully embodying outcome independence and abundance. Knowing that if this deal is meant for you, you'll get it. And if it's not meant for you, and if it's more so meant to be a lesson and something for you to iterate on, then that's what it's gonna be. That's it.
Yeah. 100%. And what do you do in the seconds right before the difficult conversation?
Breathe. Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Take a little
Yeah.
calcium lactate supplement. That
Yeah.
always worked for me. You know, a little magnesium, that helps. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the vibe.
Yeah. Cool. Or, yeah, I was just gonna, or a strong drink, but no, just go with
Hey,
the magnesium, whatever works.
sometimes, yeah. It's funny, right? Like I've spoken to a lot of salespeople or people that just, like do sales over the phone or over Zoom or even in person. And I say they do their best job when they have like, one or two drinks in their system because they're loose, but they're not sloppy, right? And they're like a little bit out of their head and they could have a more, present conversation. So there's some truth to that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Absolutely. But magnesium and calcium and stuff, yeah, absolutely, that would help you. And breathing. Breathing is the best way to regulate yourself. So, yeah, absolutely. Now, for a business owner listening who feels that their sales has hit a plateau, what is the first step that they should take to start seeing their business through this pattern, lens?
Yep. What steps can they take to start seeing sales from a pattern based lens? Um, it's tough because I'd say go and review your calls, but if you go and review your calls but you don't know what to look for, you're not actually going to find what you're looking for, right? So first it starts with understanding what it is you're looking for, and the most important thing to look for is, are you actually listening to the prospect? Are you staying true to yourself, right? And are you staying present? It starts
Mm,
with those three things. And if you can screen your calls for those and your sales are plateauing, I guarantee you that you're dropping the ball in one of those three categories, right? And if you just tweak one of those three, wherever you're dropping the ball, and you start listening to the prospect more and basing your questions and answers around that, or if you start being more present, or if you start being more true to yourself and your state and how you feel and the product you're selling in alignment, I guarantee you, I literally guarantee you, your sales will stop plateauing, right? This is if you're looking at it from a sales standpoint. Now, I'm not going to solve your marketing problems, right? That is up to your marketing team or whoever does that for you. But it's if you're getting the same amount of leads, the same quality of leads, and just deals are not closing, then it's 100% something in those three categories, right? And it
yeah.
sounds woo woo. It sounds like, yeah, just manifest and believe and you'll win. That's not what this is. That's like people smell authenticity. People smell congruence. It's a very instinctual thing, and so if you focus on it, you're going to get the results.
Well, you're gonna make them feel comfortable. You're gonna make them feel like, that you're listening and you're present with them. Yeah, and you're showing up as your true self rather than wearing a mask or something like that. One last question is, what could be the one question that they ask themselves after every call?
How congruent was I to who I am as a person, to what we are as a business, to the value that we bring to the market, and to what the prospect wants and needs?
Nice. I like that. Awesome. Now, Mitch, if people have been listening to this episode and they would like to connect with you or learn more about you, what offers you've got, could you share a little bit about that, please?
Absolutely. So they could find me online. They could go to my website, revsignals.io, revsignals.io, and or they could find me on Instagram at Mitch Sapoff, Mitch Sapoff. I'm going to start posting some more content on there, so they'll see some cool stuff coming out.
I'll keep an eye out for that myself. I can always learn about sales. And what we'll do is we'll put that in the show notes, but also there'll be a dedicated page for this episode on the Champion Mindset Collective Hub. It will have your bio, it will have your links, it will have an article, a practical guide. That will be a 3-page guide that kind of summarizes everything we've been talking about. And all the videos and everything will be there as well, including you can go and look at your video stats from YouTube and see how they're tracking as well, so that if they start flatlining, you can start to give them a bit of a nudge.
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. Now we're at the quick fire round. So we've got 6 very quick fire questions, and you can answer these questions in a single word or a short sentence. The first question for you is, how do you define success, and has that definition evolved for you over time?
Success is staying rooted in your truth. And how has the definition of it evolved over time? Well, I used to think that success was money or achieving a certain milestone in life. But over time, as I've gotten more and more spiritual and more conscious and more, in touch with self, I've realized that it's just about staying in truth.
Mm, mm. Who's been your greatest inspiration and why?
When I was younger, I'd say my mom. I still love my mom. She's still an inspiration to me. But with regards to truth, I had a great, 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 great container that I was in a couple of months ago, like a men's container, by this guy named Armin, who used to run the Think and Grow Rich school, and then he found spirituality and found self, and started leading these like spiritual containers, and he taught me a lot for sure. Yeah.
What is something that you believe that others may disagree with?
Confrontation and friction is a great thing because it enables you to have a human to human conversation and call out the elephant in the room and call a spade and put in your 2 cents and all of the idioms. And it's a great opportunity for you and the person that you're experiencing the friction with to grow as people in ascent.
If you could go back and give young Mitch some advice, what would it be?
Stop worrying so much about how you present to the outside world and start worrying about how you present to yourself.
Yeah, it's all internal. Yeah, absolutely. What is one message that you'd like to share with the world?
Sales can be a beautiful thing once you shift the way that you look at it and shift the approach that you bring to your prospects.
Last question is, what does it mean to you to be a champion and have a champion mindset?
Don't do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, but do the same thing over and over again if you have signal from the world that it's even slightly working.
Yeah, 100%. Mitch, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this chat. It's funny how we always look at the new tactic or clever trick when things get tough, but usually the answer is sitting right there in how we handle ourselves under pressure. It's all
Yeah.
internal. And absolutely, we've got to be looking at those patterns and understanding what's happening for us. The big one for me today is that looking at those patterns instead of just trying to work harder, it's just stop and see where you're actually driving your choices in the moment. And once you have that pattern clearly understood, then everything starts to shift. Thanks, Mitch, for coming and sharing this on the podcast today. And if you've been watching or reading, if you've been watching or listening to this episode and you've got something out of this, please hit the subscribe button. It's interesting how many people watch but never subscribe. We would love to get some love from you and have some subscribes. And send this link to someone who may benefit from this, someone who's struggling. Maybe connect them with Mitch, who can help them. Everything we've talked about in the show notes and also on the episode page that will be on the Champion Mindset Collective hub. Lastly, I just want to say you are loved, you're worthy, champion your life, champion your greatness, and have an amazing day.